everyone, and welcome to Work Past the Record with me, your host, Lori Howard Wagner. I hope everybody's had a great 2 weeks, maybe learned some items from the last two podcasts. The first one was really just an introduction. The last one we did was Attitude is Everything. Tonight, we're going to talk about communication, the importance of communication, not only in your personal life, but also in a professional setting. When you're first getting out of incarceration or you have not worked for a long period of time due to your record and you're getting back into the professional work setting, it is sometimes hard to communicate properly. One, because you haven't done it in so long. If you've been incarcerated for a long period of time, we know that you communicate differently when you're incarcerated. You do when you're trying to get back into society. Communication has four basic forms: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. At one time, reading and writing were probably lower on the list of ways to communicate than they are today, mainly because texting is considered a form of writing, and reading those texts, you're reading. So when we talk about communication, I want you to think of a regular 24-hour day and write on a piece of paper: speaking, listening, reading, writing. Think about a percentage that you do each day, and it should equal 100%. Why I say it's important to think about texting as writing and reading is because we don't do that. We think of writing as in writing a note. We think of reading as reading a book, but it's more than that. So when we communicate, it's important to know some basic rules. First of all, what is the message that I want to get across? Who needs to hear it? And how am I going to get that message out to that person or those people? We also have to actively listen. If we only hear what we want to hear, we don't necessarily hear what we need to hear. So actively listening means really paying attention to what the speaker is telling you, pausing, processing that, and then responding. As humans, we start forming answers in our heads when someone's speaking to us to respond, and we miss sometimes the context of what is being said. Also, texting. It's a great way to get a message quickly to someone, especially if you think, hey, they may be busy. I'll just shoot them a text. The problem with texting is this: when you text somebody, you cannot see their body language. You cannot hear the tone in their voice. If it's urgent, you can't hear that, right? So texting is good for things that aren't very important, but if it's something important, you need to speak to someone. Sometimes even on the phone, it's not the best way to communicate. It's better to do it face to face. So that's what I mean when I say, how do I need to communicate this to someone? If you're going to be out sick from work, you should not text your boss and say, hey, I'm not coming in today. That is a reason to make a phone call. If you've received a phone call saying, we would love to bring you back for a second interview, please let us know what times work for you, and they've left you a voicemail and you know it's a cell phone, you should not text back, hey, I'm available on this day. You should professionally call back and give a list of dates and times that you're available for interviews. The problem also with texting is when you're reading them. Depending on the mood you're in, the state of mind you're in at the time, a text message can be misconstrued. Someone could text you a simple text message: hope your day's going well. In the meantime, they don't know that you've had a million things happen within your day that have upset your plans or changed the way you needed to do something. You look at that message and you automatically think, oh, what are you being, a smart aleck? Are you trying to give me a hard time? Your mood interprets how you read back that text message, which is why I say a text message is great for something simple. Hey, I made dinner. It's in the microwave for you. Hey, I left some papers on your desk for you. Could you look at them? That's fine. But when you need to get important messages out, it's important to speak them. You don't want your boss to not call you. You don't want your boss to leave you a note saying, we need to talk because we want to promote you. You want that to come face to face with you and say, hey, we want to promote you. We need to talk about what you need to learn to be able to do that. It's the same thing when you're leaving a message for someone else. If you're working on a project with somebody and you've gotten to a certain spot on that project and you're leaving for the day, and the person coming in that's going to be working with you on this project is running late and you're not going to see them, it's okay to leave a note. Hey, this is where I left off. This is where you should pick up. I'll talk to you later. Let me know how far you've gone. That's fine. What happens when we say, hey, John, can you let Mary know that I need this, this, and this done? What happens? If you've ever played that game telephone when you were a child, I know that if I tell John, this is what I need Mary to do, and then John sees Joe and says, Joe, this is what Lori needs Mary to do. By the time it gets to Mary, Mary doesn't know what I need her to do because everybody has taken what has been said, molded it to what they believed was said, and Mary never gets done what I want done because the message has been shaped to all the people that it's gone through before. So this is why it's important to know who needs to hear it, how it needs to be presented to that person. What is the end goal? So if the end goal is to complete a project at work by Friday and it's Wednesday, making sure that you have told all of your people on that team that are working on that project in person, this is what needs to be done. Or by note, hey, this is where I left off. If somebody could do this, and then we get into that part. Somebody could do this. No, a point. John, you do this. Joe, you do that. Mary, you do this. Then there's no miscommunication, correct? Miscommunication happens, as I said, because we hear information, we interpret it the way we think it's being said, and then we mold it and shape it to what we believe the message should be. So communication is extremely important. It's important in your personal life because you don't want to have problems with other people because they're not understanding what you're saying. It's also very important in your professional life because you want to get your message across professionally, courteously, and to the point. When we communicate, we should be to the point, brief, and use language that everyone can understand. I was a firefighter paramedic for over 20 years. I say this to every group that comes through when I'm teaching employability skills. If I start speaking in the medical language or slang that we used my entire time as a paramedic, if you haven't been in that field, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So being able to read the room and know who needs to hear something from you and using language they can understand is very important. We don't want confusion. We don't want things done wrong. We want to work harder, not smarter. Smarter, not harder. Sorry. We want to work smarter, not harder. So we want to get the information out correctly the first time. If you're the recipient and you don't understand a term that's being used or an instruction that's being presented to you, when they pause, say, I have a question. There's nothing wrong with asking a question and getting clarification on something. I say that all the time. It's better to know exactly what's wanted than guess and do what's unwanted. So miscommunication can happen very easily by people not using proper terms, by going off topic, by you not asking questions, by not actively listening, by the wrong people getting the information. So knowing how to properly communicate is important. And there are several different ways that we communicate, correct? I know everybody's sort of passive aggressive, but there is passive, there's assertive, and there's aggressive communicators. Passive communicators are kind of the people that can be seen as a wimp or a pushover. And then the aggressors are seen as bullies or mean. And the assertive people are the people that right to the point, and they're more like the mediators. And then you have passive aggressive, where someone uses passive tendencies to aggressively get what they want. So knowing what kind of a communicator you are is important as well. I'm assertive. I try not to be aggressive. Depending on the situation, sometimes you have to have a little aggression to get your point across, correct? Without really being mean or a bully. And we all use all three types of communication depending on the situation. So sometimes we're passive, sometimes we're aggressive, sometimes we're assertive. When I talk to my grandchildren, I'm passive. They're my grandchildren. They can have anything they want in my head. So, yes, I am passive. But if I have someone trying to bully me, then I may get a little aggressive to protect myself and put an end to that. Knowing your style of communication is important. And a lot of people that are just getting out of long-term incarceration are more aggressive. Why? Because they've been in fight or flight mode the entire time that they've been incarcerated. That's all they know. I've never been incarcerated, knock on wood, but I hear the stories from my people as they come through, and it's hard to be inside. There's gangs, there's extremely aggressive people. So being able to protect yourself is how you communicate. That can't happen on the outside in an employer perspective. You need to be professional at all costs. If someone's being aggressive towards you, take a step back. Bring in a third party. Let them know this communication isn't happening right. Can you please step in? When we get to conflict resolution, we will talk about that more. It falls in with communication, correct? So communication is very important. Being an active listener, really hearing what the other person says, stopping, pausing before responding, giving a clear, decisive answer. Those are all good forms of professional communication, or any communication for that matter. When we miscommunicate our message, then the project or what we're trying to accomplish doesn't occur. It happens a lot. I am from Massachusetts and I'm in a southern state. So sometimes they can't understand what I'm saying. Sometimes I can't understand what they're saying. I will always listen, stop, pause, and say, wait, I'm not familiar with that term. Or I'm not quite understanding what you're trying to tell me, and have them repeat it back to me. And then I repeat it back to them, and we're usually pretty good. Culture, style of language, all of those things can lead to a problem with communication. Body language. If someone looks confused when you're telling them something, you should stop and say, do you have any questions? You have to read the room, basically. They should be reading you too, though. If you look confused, they should stop and ask you, do you have any questions? Never be afraid to say, yes, I do, because I'm not kind of lost here, and get the question out. Communication is key. It's really, really important. It's how an employer sees you for who you are. So when you're going for an interview, it is very important to be open, honest, and clearly communicate the answers to any questions they may ask you. One of the questions I ask is, what is in your criminal background? Because my program, you have to have a criminal background. What is in your criminal background? People will tend to start telling me about their criminal background and almost pleading their case to me. Don't do that. If someone says to you, you stated you had a criminal background, would you care to share that with us? At that point, it's your choice to say yes or no. Do not plead your case, and don't give them more than what they need to know. Let's say you had an armed robbery 15 years ago, and you know that that is going to pop up on your background check. You may want to say, I had an armed robbery 15 years ago. Since then, I have had nothing on my record. That's all you have to say. You don't have to tell them where the robbery took place, who you were with, blame someone else. You don't need to do that. Precise, to the point, short and sweet. That's it. They're going to see it when they run your background, but you've already told them. So you have taken control of your narrative. I'm going to say it every single podcast. Taking control of your narrative is important because you don't want somebody else to do it. When we communicate, as I said, short and to the point, some people will go to tell you something so simple. The sky is blue. But they don't just say the sky is blue. They tell you, when I woke up this morning, it was gray out, it was foggy, it was slightly sunny, and they'll go through the whole weather thing before they tell you the sky was blue. You don't need that. You don't need to take a trip around and around and around to get to the point. Remember that when you're speaking to someone, point A to point B. That's what they need to know. As I said, when you're interviewing, it's so easy to feel that you need to add in. You don't. Answer the questions they ask you with short, concise, accurate, and truthful answers. I see that you have a criminal background. Would you care to share that with me? Is it going to be relevant to this position? You can ask that. If the interviewer says, Well, yes, because you're going to be working with customers. We just need to know that it's not something that would put them at risk. You can tell them, I have felony shoplifting charges. They are from 7 years ago. Since that time, I have been in no trouble. They may follow up with, what has changed that would prevent you from taking something that's not yours now? Well, I've been through a rehab. At the time I was homeless. I now have a stable housing situation, and I don't need to steal. Simple, right? That is the importance of communication. When we talk with one another, it's important to be respectful and watch the person to see if something you're saying is offending them so you can apologize. I notice a lot of times when I'm dealing with people that have been in and out of jail or prison over long periods of their life, they don't have a filter sometimes when they're speaking. I had one person who decided to tell this joke that was very off color to another male, but myself and another female were in the room. And I had to stop him and say, hey, that may have worked when you were in jail with your cellmates because he told me that's where he heard the joke. But that doesn't work in this setting. I'm in here and there's another female in here, and that joke is inappropriate and could get you in trouble for sexual harassment. Many people with incarceration history do not understand sexual harassment. They don't realize that saying these off color things can get them in trouble. So knowing what to say and watching who your audience is and how you present things can save you a lot of trouble. And I know that's hard when you're not used to being in society with anybody outside of an institution. When you're used to only being in with other inmates and this is how you talk to one another, it doesn't carry over so well in society when you're trying to reintegrate. I know that many prison systems offer employability skills that teach you how to communicate when you're coming back into society. I like to just reiterate, sometimes you learn that there and you're all set to go, and then you get out and you forget it. When you're trying to get a job, it's important to remember that. It's also important to remember that once you're in the job, know who's around you. Watch how you speak to people. You don't need to be aggressive to get your point across like you were when you were inside. You need to be able to speak to someone straight out in a professional manner. Also brings me to filler words. I know I catch myself using them and it bothers me, and I'm always trying to stop doing it. When we're speaking, it's important to try to not use like all the time. Or I know the younger generation uses like all the time. Then I like went this way, then I like did that. It's just habit. I do it sometimes. I try not to. I try not to use it. I try to pause when I can because I speak so much during a day. It's important to sometimes take a step back, take a breath, and think about what you're saying next. When you do that and you take that pause, you're less likely to use like. So I use so a lot too, and I hate that I do that, and I try to stop doing it. I was trying it in this. It didn't work. I think I've used it a few times. So that's important to communicate clearly as well. Trying not to use filler words, trying not to use like all the time, speaking calmly, speaking slowly, speaking clearly, and to the point are all important in professional communication. When we speak too quickly, people are less likely to listen and they're going to miss what your point is. Speaking slowly, speaking clearly, and really thinking about what you're going to say is a big key to concise and professional communication. If a manager looks at you and gives you instructions so quickly that you can't comprehend it, are you going to get the job done right? No. Think of that when you're trying to pass something on to somebody. You may be in a position when you get hired at a job where you're actually training somebody. Think about that. You want to train them properly, slow, concise, clear, to the point. Same thing. If someone's doing that to you, say, excuse me, could you repeat that a little bit slower because I missed what you were trying to tell me? It's super simple and it's not rude. It's in how you say it. Using excuse me, using I'm sorry, I missed that, using pardon me. Could you repeat that? All important parts of communication. I know it sounds simple, and this is just something that you should automatically know. But if you have long periods of incarceration, you forget because you're in a different type of population. than you are when you get back into society. And I find it so important to emphasize communication to all my people when they come through employability skills, because so many of them don't have good communication skills. Let's say that you were never a good communicator before you got incarcerated because you're a little bit of a loner, or you're not used to being around people, or you're shy, you're an introvert. Someone's always spoken for you. Being able to learn communication skills is very important. You're out there on your own now. You're trying to get a job. Nobody's going to speak for you. You need to be able to speak clearly and to the point to an employer without pleading your case. Again, we never want to plead our case. One of the questions I ask is, how do you hold yourself accountable? A lot of times people look at you and they say, what do you mean? How do you hold yourself accountable? If you're in the wrong, how do you own that? Most of the time, you'll get people that say, if I did it, I did it, and I'll be the first to admit it. A lot of times, I get people that want to blame everybody else. Don't be that person. If someone asks you that question without going into great detail, simply communicate. If I make the mistake, I will be the first to admit that I made the mistake, and I will ask, how do I correct it? That is proper communication, plain and simple. If someone approaches you and they're not very nice to you when they speak to you because you've made an error, take a step back, take a breath, and apologize. I'm really sorry. I didn't know, or I made the mistake. Communication, it's going to bring the other person down most of the time so that you can have a civil conversation. And I believe that's the problem with communication. We're so quick to be ready to defend or attack someone for speaking to us, which is why I said earlier, active listening is not just listening. It's hearing what the other person has to say. I can be really bad at someone's talking to me, and in my head, I'm forming an answer already to respond. I've worked on it and worked on it. I'm getting better at it, where I don't do that now. I stop and I try to clear my entire head so I can hear what that person has to say to me. Why? Because if I'm not listening to them and then I have already formed this response and I respond, it may come off as aggressive. It may come off as blaming. It may come off as rude. So actively listening is important. Actually listening, actually hearing what the person has to say. Don't form the answer. Think about it. What were they trying to get across to me? And then respond. When we read a text, we should take a breath if we're in a bad mood and read the text as though we have that person standing right in front of us speaking it. If it's someone that you know well and it's someone that you've been around a long time, you know how they're asking you the question. You don't need them to be standing there. For example, if my wife sends me a text and I'm having a really bad day, I don't read that text in aggression. I take a step back and think, what is she trying to say to me? What would she be saying if she was right in front of me? And that's what you need to do, because then you're going to read that text in the context that it was meant for you to read it in. When we text someone, same thing. If we're in a bad mood and we're responding to a text, we shouldn't respond in that bad mood, because that other person probably isn't even the reason you're in a bad mood, and they don't know you're in a bad mood because you're texting. Take a breath, then respond by text, or then send a text. It's all in pause, and pause is part of communication. We should pause when we listen so that we can actively hear the context. We can understand what the other person is trying to tell us, and we can think of an appropriate response to give back. When we speak, we should pause, think about what we're going to say, how it should be said, what terms should be used, and how important is it? Who needs to hear this? And then speak our piece. These are all parts of effective communication. It can be difficult. It takes practice. This week, practice. Look in a mirror. Speak to yourself. Tell yourself a story and ask yourself a question in that story. Before you respond, think about it. Practice with another person if you have that, option to do. Have someone sit with you and speak to you as though they were interviewing you or just having a conversation with you. You can ask someone, I need to practice on my communication skills. Can we please speak to one another? Ask me anything. Let that person ask you a question Before you start forming that answer, hear what they're asking you. Pause, form the answer, and respond. The art of communication. As I said, texts are so convenient when you're trying to reach somebody quickly, but there's a time and a place for them. If you need to get important information out to someone, don't text them. Don't write them a note. Make it a point to be able to speak with them face to face if it's super important, but at least by phone if it's kind of important, but you don't need to be face to face to do it. Don't leave them a note. Don't send them a text. I mean, how many people get broken up by text? Stupid. If you're going to break up with someone, you shouldn't send them a text. If you're going to quit a job, you shouldn't send a text. You should communicate to your manager or management team, however you do it, in writing, but also verbally. Put a notice in writing and then hand deliver it to your manager if you have that option. If you have to send an email, then you send an email, but you should then follow up with a phone call. Hey, Joe, I just sent you an email. I am giving my 2 weeks notice. Could you please read it? Let them read it. Or you could say, could you please read it and get back to me? I'll give you time. And that's it. It's important to follow up with that. Don't just send an email or hand someone a note and say, yeah, I quit here. That's not proper communication. We should always give a notice. We should always communicate. You want to know why? Let's say you're leaving a job because you just got offered a job paying you $2 or $3 more an hour down the road. And you go to your manager, let's say, hand them your 2 weeks notice in a paper form. So there is a paper trail and say, hey, as much as I enjoy working here, I have to give my notice. Here it is in writing. They may say to you, well, why are you leaving? Well, the new place offered me $3 an hour more to do a job, and I need the money, so I need to take that. You don't know that your manager might say, well, hold on, let me see what I can do. If you have time in at your present job and you enjoy it, your manager may be able to come up with the money that you'd be gaining by going somewhere else. It doesn't hurt, but communication is important. You don't send somebody a text and say, hey, I quit. I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. This is my last day. That's not how we do it. Text messages have made us lazy. Text messages have made us unable to communicate in a proper manner. Nobody talks anymore. Everybody just wants to text. I believe in speaking face to face or on the phone, not just texting. I like to hear someone else's voice on the other end. It's hurt us with socialization. How many times do you go to a gathering and everybody's on their cell phone and nobody's talking? Or you go out to dinner and everybody's on their cell phone and nobody's talking. I'm guilty of it too. I try not to be. Communication is very important. It's what keeps us human. It's what keeps us in check. It's what gives us the ability to be social. It's what gives us the ability to properly get across what we need to. We can type an angry text. Do you think the recipient knows that you were angry when you were typing it? You may have been swearing the whole time that you were typing the text. The person on the other end doesn't know that. It's important to communicate verbally. Talk to one another. I have many people that have done years of incarceration and they get out and technology is not their thing. They don't know how to text. They don't know how to get to emails. They don't know how to do that stuff. They're just learning it because they've done 20 years in prison. People get out sometimes and they tell me when I went in, we were still using pagers. There wasn't even cell phones. Or when I went in, we had little flip phones and you had to go through every number 6 times to get to the letter you want. And if you missed it, you had to do it again. Now we have all these smartphones, right? And we have these little computers right in our hand and we can do so many things with it. But it's taken away from our ability to be able to speak to one another. And I feel that for this program and for my podcast, it's about being able to communicate in a proper manner, not like you're still incarcerated, but also being able to speak face to face with somebody or by phone with someone and not by text. So practice it. If you live with somebody or you have a good friend, talk to them. Don't text, talk to them. Learn to communicate because as the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it, right? You're not going to miscommunicate. You're going to understand how to read body language and facial expressions and tone, and you'll be able to match that and properly communicate with anyone. Communication's important, as I said, knowing who needs to hear it, how it needs to be brought out, what the end goal is. Those are the tasks of communication. So think about the next time you need to tell somebody something. What is the end goal of this? Well, I want to take that person out on a date, or I want to tell my boss that I want to learn more so that I can promote. That's the end goal. How are you going to present that? All right, you want to tell your boss that you want to learn more so that you can promote. You want to verbally tell them, hey, when can I start training on the register? Or when can I start learning pricing? When can I learn paperwork? What do I need to learn to promote to the next level? Because I want to do that. You want to verbally tell them. Your end goal is to promote. You have verbally told them what this is what I want to do. How do I go about doing it? You've asked the question. Now you wait for the response. You've just communicated. That's not something you send in a text. That's not something you write a note and throw on your manager's desk who may be busy. You verbally communicated it. It's the same thing if you're going to ask somebody on a date, right? You're not going to send them a text. Hey, do you want to go out sometime? No, you're going to verbally say to them, hey, I was wondering, do you want to go to dinner one night? Do you want to go to a movie? Do you want to go get coffee and chat? That's what you want to do because you want to see that person's body language. You want to hear their tone. You want to match that tone. But that's how we communicate. You have the goal. You know how you have to communicate it and who needs to hear it. The promotion, you want to promote. You've spoken to your manager verbally. There you go, right? The goal is to get a promotion. Who needed to hear it? Your manager. How are you going to tell them? You verbally told them. You've hit all three items. Every time you communicate, you have to think about that. Every time you're going to respond to something, you have to think about that. So I hope that this little bit of communication study here or skill helps you in your journey to finding employment, properly communicating, not miscommunicating, all important things. If anybody, again, has anything that they want me to go over, please feel free to drop a comment in the comment section on Spotify, and I'll try to do a podcast on that. If anybody has any questions, also, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll answer any questions I can. For now, communication is key. I hope you find somebody that you can practice with, especially if it's difficult for you to communicate. The other thing is don't be afraid to communicate. Communicate. Just know the proper way to do it. Don't be aggressive. Don't, when you're first asking a question, if you don't understand, don't get defensive. Ask for clarification. Communication is key. It's key to everything in life. And I hope that this helps you. I hope it taught you a little bit about active listening, the proper way to communicate, how miscommunication happens, how we avoid that, and it helps you be successful in your journey to finding employment. Have a great day, everybody. Great 2 weeks, I should say. Talk to you soon.